Yo, what's good, bro? Today react to that. How to beat every death game in Squid Games. If none of you don't know what the Squid Games is, or if some of you do know, it's the Netflix series or movie that just came out recently. I think it was a series. I don't think it was a movie. But yeah, it just came out recently. And right now, this dude, he just said he has every way to beat the death game in Squid Games. So without further ado, let's watch it.
If you were
Also, comment down below if some of you would have died in some of those games.
on an island, forced to play
Because that one right there, that was different.
or executed,
And
what
that.
would you do?
Man, I would have probably got clapped in that mud.
Break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat every death game in Squid Game. This guy is the unluckiest man in the world.
Facts.
Leon here has just gambled the last of his life savings on a horse track and manages to win 4 million won. Collecting the money from the teller, he runs out to spend his new hard-earned cash and steps outside to call his family with the good news. He's on top of the world, but that's when he notices a gang of loan sharks approaching him and realizes his luck has just run out. Panicking, he runs back inside to escape them, but crashes into this woman and falls to the ground, now realizing that this pickpocket has just stolen all of his winnings. The loan sharks finally
That right there was that was crazy.
corner him in the restroom to collect his debt, but when he checks his pocket, he finds it slashed open and his money has disappeared. With nothing to collect, they force him to sign his contract with his own blood, promising to pay them back in 1 month. Depressed, the gambler sits on the subway bench to wait for the next train home, when this businessman comes over to talk to him. He asks if Yoon here wants to play a game, and the gambler thinks he's just an annoying salesman, but then he opens his briefcase, revealing stacks of cash and 2 folded paper squares. The salesman invites
Bro, this part was so funny, bro. I ain't even gonna hold you.
him to play the Korean.
Also, if you didn't watch the movie, I would recommend you not to watch this because some of the stuff might be exposed.
Game back
Pretty much all of it.
promising to give him 100,000 won every time he wins, but he'll have to pay the salesman if he loses. It's a ridiculous gamble, but with everything to gain, Gyun decides he's in. The man places a folded paper on the ground, and the gambler tries to flip it over, but he only manages to make the red tile jump. He's failed, but when the
But watch
salesman
this.
takes his turn, he flips it
Bah.
over on the first try. Gyun tells the man he doesn't have the money to pay him, but the salesman offers to reduce his debt in return for 1 slap in the face. It's an offer he can't refuse, and desperate to win, he takes the slap to continue playing. He keeps losing each round, getting smack after smack, until finally he throws down his tile and flips the
Pop.
salesman's paper over.
And won.
Gyun has just won 100 grand for playing a children's game, but it's not as innocent as it may seem. Okay, first of all, let me just say that this guy here needs to be careful, because if any of these trains are going to Busan, then he's going to instantly regret it. Now, as for Gyun here, accepting this game was
What
a
the-
terrible idea. This man can't stop himself from gambling with money he doesn't even have, and against someone who walks around with a dakji in his suitcase and is clearly better at the game than him.
Facts.
Anyone with a brain wouldn't take that bet. But once Gyun realizes that it's free money and only requires a slap in the face to keep playing, he doesn't stop to consider that this whole situation is suspicious as hell. Look at this guy's outfit here. This man is strictly on business, and since he approached him with such a specific agenda, it tells us he already knew that Gyun is a degenerate gambler and is targeting him for some hidden reason. This salesman gave him every possible chance to make sure he's won some money from him, and nobody tries that hard to lose money unless what you're getting in return is much more valuable. Gyun was too greedy to recognize any of these warning signs, and the man let his emotions get the better of him. Now, none of this guy's suspicious behavior matters if you had a proven strategy to play and win. Dakji is a game that Korean school kids play, and it's so popular that the game is even televised for mass entertainment. But it's not the strongest player who wins this game, it's the smartest and most coordinated. If you look at this player here, he manages to flip the paper in 1 try, and that's because he used the most surface area to make more contact with the other paper. If you can strike the target with the flat side of your dakji paper, then the momentum will be transferred and carry the paper up on the bounce so that it flips over. This might seem counterintuitive, but it's just plain physics. And you can see this player was not successful because he was trying to use the edge, which is not a winning strategy. If Gyun here had known the best way to play this game, he could hustle this businessman for all his cash and walk away without having to get slapped in the process. Now, even though he won, this one victory will soon lead the gambler to playing 6 of the most terrifying death games
That
you
was
could possibly
crazy,
imagine.
man.
And instead of a slap in the cheek, he'll soon be gambling with his life, but you don't have to.
Your bank is giving you
so easy to use, and you all
We don't have it.
so he'll be killed if he doesn't.
How do they do that?
The gambler asks him
Where do you get the mask from?
and the salesman hands him a business card telling him to call if he wants to join the competition of a lifetime. Guillaume considers his offer, but this will be the biggest mistake of his life. Celebrating his newfound luck, he returns back home for dinner with his mother, but the woman knows the money came from gambling. She tells him that his ex-wife is planning to move to America, and he'll only be able to see his daughter if he has the finances to prove he can care for her. Guillaume is devastated, and realizing she's right, he decides to call the number on the business card, telling the salesman that he accepts his offer to play another game. Later that night, he waits outside to be picked up.
This is when everything, like, he thought it was a game.
When a van
Literally, I thought it was a game. Like,
inside,
you respawn or
he
something.
notices all the other passengers are
No,
asleep.
ain't no
When the van
respawning,
starts to
baby.
fill with toxic gas, the gambler realizes he's just f***ed up big time and gets knocked unconscious. When the man opens his eyes, he wakes up to find himself lying in a bunk bed, surrounded by hundreds of others and cots just like him. They're all wearing uniforms with numbers on them, and as everyone gathers in the center of the room, the front door opens, and a team of guards walk inside.
I didn't even know it was
This
that
man
many
with the
people.
square mask tells them they'll be playing in 6 different games, and those who make it through all 6 games will get a cash prize. This man demands to know why they were brought here, and the guard presses a button, playing a montage of several people being slapped. Everyone in this room is drowning in debt.
No
and
way.
They've all been invited here to win enough money to pay it off. The players all line up to sign consent forms with 3 clauses, stating that they must keep on playing, that if they refuse to play, they'll be eliminated, and that the games can be ended if the majority of players agree to stop. Okay, there's nothing more dangerous than a room full of desperate people who have nothing to lose. And that's why the real threat are these players, not just the games. From the video that was played, we can see the Dakji salesman use the same trick on everybody, and they've only invited players who are willing to gamble money they don't have on a game they're unlikely to win. It's textbook psychological manipulation, and it proves this wasn't a game for cash. This was a test that everyone in the room passed, and now they know what we're willing to say yes to, which should scare the crap out of us. If we all agreed to play for more money, then we can be sure that the penalty for losing is going to be a lot worse than a few slaps. Now,
You ain't
if you
lying.
pay close attention to the details of this place, you'll realize that Guillaume here is about to have a really shitty day, because this place looks like a death camp designed by IKEA and H&M. Even refugee camps don't stack their bunks 6 beds high, and everyone is given a uniform with a number instead of their name, so their identities have been stripped from them, and it's an immediate red flag that this is going to become a death game.
Oh, I didn't even remember that.
Then there are
I mean, I didn't
455
even
other people
realize
who might
that.
kill you to get ahead, and it won't matter what game we're playing. The best strategy right now is to lay low, stay quiet, and observe our surroundings to gain more information to make sure we have a competitive advantage. A key thing to notice here is that these guards have different shapes on their masks, but this could indicate different work roles. The circles could be workers, and the square mask could be a manager of some kind. Recognizing power is extremely important because it helps you behave accordingly, and pissing off the wrong person just might get you killed. Now, signing this contract is
Not
actually on
really.
top of the death game here, because after being drugged against your will and kidnapped, this whole
Cause
enterprise
he
is
said
complete,
everybody was equal there, so I don't know about that one.
which means the contract can't be binding. This is designed to create the illusion of choice and keep you playing, even when things start getting really f***ed up. The fact that nobody here has realized this contract is meaningless tells us they aren't prepared for what's about to happen next. After being processed, they're all taken to their first game, entering an outdoor room with a massive clearing, and in front of them is a giant doll standing at the other end of the field. Guillaume here recognizes one of the players as his childhood friend, Sang-woo, and walks up to say hello. Suddenly, the gates behind them lock shut, and the competitors are told they'll be playing the children's game, Red Light, Green Light. Players must run to the finish line while the doll looks away, but if it looks back and catches them moving, they will be eliminated. They have only 5 minutes to cross the finish line, and with that, the game begins. The players start running across the field, but the doll suddenly announces red light before anyone expects it, and this player is caught completely off guard. It spots
Literally.
the man still trying to catch his balance, and a voice announces that he's eliminated. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out, and the player collapses to the ground, motionless. He's just been shot dead, and realizes they've been tricked into playing a death game. Everyone starts running for the exits, but the doll is detecting every movement, and bullets start
Everybody
flying. By
gone.
the time the shooting stops, over 100 people have been murdered, and the surviving players are left frozen in the field. The doll turns its head back, announcing its green light, and the group starts moving again, determined to make it out of here alive. Using this guy like a shield, this girl cleverly falls behind another.
I'm glad he blurred it out because this movie is graphic. For real, for
hide
real.
herself from the doll's sight. It's the same girl who stole the gambler's money earlier when he was running from the loan sharks, and without hesitation, she pulls the man down to launch herself ahead of the pack.
Why she didn't kill him then?
Tries to move forward, but he's grabbed by an injured player who begs him for help. One wrong move, and he's going to get him shot. But luckily, the doll turns back around just in time, and he breaks out of the man's grip. There's now 1 minute left, and the players
Also, that dude
are
got
finally
shot.
starting to reach the finish line. The man is only a few meters away from beating this game, but just as he takes a step forward, he trips over a dead body. He's about to fall on the ground, but another player saves his life, pulling him up
caught
until the doll
him.
announces green light. With only 3 seconds on the timer, Guillaume jumps through the air and finally makes it across the finish line. The remaining players who haven't crossed are all brutally shot to death, and the survivors look up to notice a massive roof close overhead. They have no idea they're on a private island in the middle of nowhere, and the only way out of here is
that's a
to win.
private
That's 1 day
island.
down, with only 5 more to go. Okay. This is the most horrifying children's game I've ever seen. But 001 here is having the time of his life
I'm saying.
because he understands something that everyone else is too scared to realize. This game isn't just about speed, it's about how much ground you can cover with enough stability to freeze at any given moment. With this in mind, the best method here is to walk with feet flat on the ground and a wide stance so our center of gravity stays low and stable. This old man was born for this moment because he moved
like,
very stable.
for all the
It's
moments.
the best example of how everyone here needs to walk if they want to make it out alive. Now, we can't afford to be frozen and shot like Guillaume here because there's a lot of ground for us to cover in a very short time. This room is designed to deceive you into thinking it's smaller than it is. But there's a trick we can use to gauge the distance so that we know how fast we need to walk to reach the finish line before the clock runs out. Taking advantage of parallax and anatomy, you can actually use your thumb
how you supposed to
figure
do
out
all
the
this?
field.
Like,
The space between your eyes is about 1/10 the length of your arm. So if you stuck your thumb out, closing one eye after another, your thumb would appear to move 1/10 the distance as the guards are from where you're standing. You can actually try this right now by sticking your thumb out in front of you and closing one eye and then switching to the other eye to see your thumb move. If you do the math here, this trick tells us that we're at least 100 meters away. That means that this place is roughly the length of a soccer field. So if we want to make it across in 5 minutes, we can't afford to waste even 1 second. One of the biggest mistakes you can make here is looking at the doll instead of watching where you're placing your feet. It's important to remember that we aren't responding to visual cues here. We're listening for red light, green light.
Exactly.
We can't risk tripping or accidentally losing our footing. So watching our feet helps us shut out unnecessary information so we can concentrate on stability while keeping our ears out for the signals. The next thing I would do is try to protect myself. And there's nothing more safe in a death game than finding a good old-fashioned meat shield. If we position ourselves behind another person, then it makes it much harder for the robot to detect any movement if we happen to flinch at a gunshot or react to another player dying close by. So walking behind someone is the best insurance we have to hide it. Now, the most dangerous element of this scenario is actually the other players trapped in here with us. We have to realize that we are extremely vulnerable to anyone who wants to kamikaze their way out of here. If you get pushed over, then they're taking you out with them, and it only takes one tiny movement to get you killed. So we'll need to stay far enough away from people so they can't interfere with their progress. The best way to do this
But I thought he said everybody was equal. That's
natural human instinct is
I don't know.
covered in crisis, and they might be drawn to the shade here. So to avoid the other players, I would use the sunny side of the wall instead. This also gives us another point of stability to help us stop in time, and we can make it to the finish line without getting killed. After the game, the guards come in to congratulate the survivors on passing and announce that 255 players were killed. It's a horrifying number, and afraid for her life, this woman steps forward begging the man to let her go home. Several other players join her in protest, but that's when this massive piggy bank drops down above them and starts to fill with more cash than they've ever seen in their lives. The survivors are shocked, and the masked man tells everyone that they have an opportunity to win 45.6 billion won, but if anyone leaves, then they won't get a single penny. With that, a voting machine is set up in front of them, and they all cast their votes, but the majority of players agree to quit. The masked man tells them they can still come back if a majority agrees to compete again, and the players are sent back home. Now, it turns out that every single one of them realizes their lives outside are much worse than they remember. And Guillaume here returns to keep playing, but they're all going to instantly regret it, because this next death game is even more screwed up than the last. The vans take them to the private island, where a team of workers dress them into their uniforms, and the players finally wake up back in the same place as if they never left. Later that night, Guillaume talks with his childhood friend and suggests they team up for the next game to increase their odds of winning. The man agrees it's wise to join forces, and spotting the player who rescued him last game, the gambler insists this man join them too. That's when the old man asks if he can also be a part of their team, and Guillaume happily accepts him into the group, but his friend is not happy he invited someone so old to join their team. The next morning, all the players are led into a new arena, and as they pour in, they find an oversized playground in front of them. A voice instructs them to line up in front of one of the 4 shapes on the walls, and their choices are a circle, triangle, star, and umbrella. That's when Sang-woo here has a flashback to his childhood and suddenly realizes what this game is, but the man doesn't tell anyone what he's just discovered. Gyun here asks him if they should all choose the same shape, but he rejects the idea, suggesting they should split up to reduce the risk. Finally, the doors open as the announcer instructs them to take a case from the tables, and the players find a thin piece of hard sponge toffee with a shape in the middle. They'll have to use the needle to poke out the shape in 10 minutes.
I ain't gonna lie, I probably would have died here, bro. That jump was hard.
Crack it, they'll be executed. The game begins, and Gyun here carefully starts breaking
This
off
part was
pieces
funny,
of
bruh.
candy, but another player immediately cracks his honeycomb in half. Without hesitation, the guard pulls out his pistol and shoots the man dead, making him the
That was
first
crazy. Why did he have to be on the ramp like that, though?
this game. It starts a chain reaction as more people are executed without mercy. Gyun is sweating from the pressure. The umbrella is the hardest shape to cut, but suddenly
really
the man
is.
has a revelation. Seeing the beads of sweat falling onto the candy, he realizes he might be able to melt it with his saliva from the bottom because the outline of the shape is thinner than the rest of the honeycomb. He starts to lick the toffee while other players begin to follow his lead, and with 12 seconds left on the clock, Gyun desperately breaks apart his honeycomb, perfectly removing the umbrella from the mold.
That was
Despite
crazy.
all odds, he's won again. That's 2 games, with 4 more to go. Okay, this might seem easy, but if you pick the wrong shape in this game, you have an extremely low chance of surviving. For those of you who are unfamiliar, this candy is known as taekwondo, and removing the shape without cracking it is a very common game that Korean vendors play with kids, which is why the players recognized it as soon as they opened their tin cans. It's made out of melted sugar and baking soda, creating a unique structure inside, which makes it hard to predict how it might crack. In fracture mechanics, this is known as strain energy, and when it releases, other microcracks start to spread, making it crumble more easily. That is exactly what makes this game so challenging, because as careful as you are, it just might make your candy crack on you without warning, and you'll be shot in the face.
I didn't
The
know
more
that.
sharp angles there are in the shape, the more you are likely to break it. And that's why Gyun here is completely screwed, because he chose an umbrella which has the most angles by far. This teammate here told everyone to split up to spread out the risk, but if you think about it, his suggestion is total bullshit. Spreading out just makes it harder for the group to work together, because they won't be facing the same problems. For this reason, I would have suggested that we all select the same shape so that whatever solutions we can find, we can all benefit from them and win. It's clear that this guy is intentionally trying to get the other players killed in order to increase the prize pool for himself, and that's cold-blooded as hell. Now, there's still
Hey,
a way
now
to
that
increase
you
your
think about
chances
it.
of choosing the right shape without knowing what the game is. Look at how these first 2 players rush in to select a shape before anyone else. Both of them chose triangle, and when nobody's supposed to know what the game is yet, it probably means they recognize the game from their childhood. Now, this doesn't guarantee that triangle is the best choice, but given they are so sure of themselves when the stakes are life and death, it's not unreasonable to assume that someone this confident has probably figured something out. If the players were unsure of their decision, they would take more time to think about it, and if you have no idea what the game is, following their lead is going to be your best option. Now, if it just so happens that we get stuck with the worst shape possible, there's still hope here, because the rules never stated that you could only use the needle, and that opens up a lot more possibilities to win. Using your saliva is a smart move because getting it wet makes the candy softer, and you'll be able to cut the shape out without cracking it. This might seem obvious, but under a crazy
that's
amount of
crazy.
stress like this, it's hard to see other solutions if you're already told how you're supposed to solve them. And most of the players here were so fixated on using the needle, they didn't stop to think outside of the box. This is actually very similar to the
Facts.
candle problem, which was a famous psychological test in the 1950s. The subjects were given a table, a box of thumbtacks, some matches, and a candle. They were then instructed to stick the candle to the wall without letting any wax drip onto the table, but they have to come up with a solution as fast as he possibly can. What's interesting is that most of the participants didn't consider that the box itself could be used to solve the problem until their time ran out, and it had everything to do with time pressure and how the items were presented to them.
I
You
should
can learn
stick
from
that
this by
candle in the
considering all
wall.
the things they have to work with. But none of these players realized they might be able to use the tin can here to solve their problem. Instead of licking the candy to death, they could have used the can to collect their liquids and soak the bottom of the candy way faster. All the players go back to the main room where the results of the second game are announced. 79 people were killed with 108 left standing, and that's now 34.8 billion won in the bank. Later, the players will gather for lunchtime, but when the last of them walk up to get food, they're shocked to find there's nothing left.
I might do a part 2 on this. It's long.
Unfair, but
Let me know if y'all wanna
someone
see a part 2. I'm gonna
stands
stop
up
it at
and points
25.
across the room. telling everyone that these players here cut the line to take seconds. The man walks up to the gangster and tries to pull the water out of his hand, but he's overpowered and the bottle shatters on the floor. Furious, this guy slaps him to the ground and starts beating him to death as the guards do nothing to stop him. All of a sudden, the scoreboard announces another player has died, and the total cash prize goes up by 100 million won. A couple of guards walk in to take the body away while everyone stares in horror, realizing that this game just got a lot more dangerous. Later, Sang-woo here tells his team to stay awake tonight in case they're attacked. The other groups are preparing for a fight, but Gi-eun here notices this girl across the room and recognizes her as the pickpocket who stole his money. The man approaches and invites her to join the team, but she rejects his offer, insisting no one here can be trusted. That night, they all get into their beds and nervously wait for the guards to leave the room. Once the lights are turned off, several people slowly begin to leave their cots, searching for an easy kill. Suddenly, this player panics as the thug grabs her and stabs the woman to death. This one murder
I didn't even
causes a
see that.
reaction, and all the other players begin killing each other for cash. Gi-eun and his team try to defend themselves, but that's when they hear the old man begging everyone to stop fighting. And when the lights turn back on, the guards run into the room, putting a stop to the madness. Okay, this just might be scarier than the actual
That's
game
crazy.
so
You ain't lying.
There are no rules or restrictions here, and when you're literally worth more dead than alive, everyone in this room has a motive to kill you. Now with that said, this is actually the best thing that could possibly happen. There were a total of 27 players who died in the chaos, and while those are better odds than any of the death games so far, this wipes out a lot of the competition that we would otherwise be facing in the next challenges. All we have to do is survive the night, and the other players can kill each other off for our direct benefit. The best strategy here is to run to the corner of the room and defend your position with a group of friends. This might seem counterintuitive, but when it's completely dark and you can't see who's coming for you, being cornered in like this leaves you with only 90 degrees of vulnerability. And that's much better than being in the middle of the room where you would have a full 360 degrees to be attacked from. If you don't have a group, then we should be hiding under one of the bunkers.
Hey, that's what I was
as soon as
thinking.
the lights go
You ain't
out.
lying.
The killers won't be able to look for anyone in hiding because it's too dark to see. So this just might be the only time I'll ever tell you that hiding under the bed is a good idea. And hey, I don't mind being called a coward if we end up outliving everyone else as a result.
Facts.
The next morning, all the players wake up, but Gi-eun here notices how tired the old man is and finds out he stayed up all night watching over the team in case someone attacked them. He's exhausted, but there's no more time to rest because the third game is about to begin.
That man
players
stayed
are
up
led
all
into a
night.
white room where they're told to divide themselves into groups of 10. Sang-woo here realizes that a team game could mean it's a physical challenge, and thinks they should find stronger men to join them. The group splits up to search for more players, but with time running out, they only manage to bring in the outcasts, realizing that 3 skinny women and an old man could put them at a severe disadvantage. The groups are taken into another room where they see 2
Which one was this?
platforms. and
Oh,
they're told
that
today's
tug of war.
game is tug of war. They'll need to pull on the rope until the other team falls off the platform to their deaths, and the guards draw lots to decide who will go first. When it's finally their turn, Gi-eun and his team stand up to see who they'll be facing, but find that their opponents are all stronger than them. They're completely outmatched, and know they won't be able to beat them with brute force. But as they ride the elevator up to the platform, the old man tells them he knows exactly how to win. Gi-eun takes a position at the front to act as a leader, with the strongest player at the very back. The group stands on alternating sides with their feet pointed forward, and as soon as the game begins, they all lean
Hey,
back
that
as
trick
far
was
as they
crazy,
can
bro. I
to
wish I would have
see
known that
who
in
will
elementary
go.
school, bro.
With this technique,
Dude
they're able
said-
to get the advantage within the first 10 seconds
Hold
and
your
cut the other
feet.
team closer to the edge, but it doesn't last for long. Their opponents gain their second wind, and the group loses their footing as they're dragged closer to the edge of the platform. But that's when Sang-woo here has a brilliant idea. He yells at everyone to take 3 steps forward at his signal, and with no other plan, they do as he says. The group steps forward, knocking the other team off balance, and
Yeah, that
instead
was
throws them
smart.
into
That
the
was
ground.
smart, too.
Now with the advantage, Gi-eun's team is finally able to pull the others off of the platform, and as the blade cuts through the rope, the players collapse, just happy to be alive. That's now 3 games they've won, and there's only 3 more to go. Okay, for anyone who's picked last in gym class, this one has got to bring back some painful memories. Because it's
this the
really
last game.
clear that
This
the
the last
biggest
game.
and strongest players are going to dominate in this game. If you're weak or old like these guys, you're at serious risk of getting...
I'm gonna drop a part 2. Y'all let me know if y'all want to see a part 2. I'm gonna drop part 2 on
Just
this.
because they had plot armor. But if I were them, I'd be looking for every possible way to cheat. Because of the players we
Facts.
have, it's going to be our best chance at surviving. Now, the truth is, this isn't just a children's game. Tug of War used to be in the Olympics from the years 1900 to 1920, and to this day, the International Olympics Committee still recognizes it as an official sport. If this seems like trivial information, I assure you it's not, because unlike silly children's games, an official sport has tons of rules, with governing bodies to make sure that the game is being played fairly. The reason this is important is because these rules are created to prevent teams from gaining an unfair competitive advantage. Now, if that doesn't put a smile on your face, then you're not paying attention. Because in a death game like this, unfair competitive advantages are everything we could possibly want to stay alive. In a death game, official sport rules are basically a gift-wrapped instruction manual for how to cheat and win. Because the workers are not going to be holding a training camp on proper tug-of-war techniques, and there's no referee on this platform. If we know what the official rules are, then it's reasonable to assume that we can break them without getting punished for it. The first rule I would break is called locking. This is usually done by placing your elbow behind your thigh, and it locks up any back and forth movement in the rope. Normally in tug of war, your hands are the only point of contact with the rope, and it means that your arms are doing a lot of work. But locking helps you easily use your entire body's weight to pull, and this rule break makes it much harder for the other team to win. Another form of cheating is for the player in the back to use what's called an anchor grip, where they wrap the end of the rope around their torso. This allows the last player to concentrate on using his full body to pull without even needing to place his hands on the rope. There are tons of tug-of-war rules that we can break here that will give us an unfair advantage, and it's the best way for a team like this to win no matter what. Now, if we're about to lose, we're going to need a Hail Mary tactic. And the best thing we can do is to have the whole team shift to one side while the player in the back ties the rope to this metal bar. This doesn't violate any of the rules stated by the square mask. And if we keep pretending to pull while letting our arms recover, the other team will have no idea we're cheating and they'll blow their muscles out. These anchors can also be used as footholds instead of relying on the friction floor to push off of. The next morning, the players are brought to another room where they're given instructions for the next game. They will need to pair up with one other person, and they have 10 minutes to find a partner. The players immediately...
I'm in the game right there. Y'all let me know if y'all want to see a part 2. This is a 44-minute video, baby. Crazy. Hey, without further ado, if y'all want to see a part 2, I will drop it as soon as I get 5 likes on this. I'm aiming for 5 likes. I'm saying for 5 likes, I'm dropping a part 2. Without further ado, though, we out. Gang. Alright, we out. Gang. Hey, y'all like it up. Subscribe, hey, help me out, and drop y'all videos, gang.